All right, so it's 10:03, so we're going to go ahead and get started this morning.
Yeah.
So definitely good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the conference. Glad that everyone's joining us. I guess that means that yesterday was good enough that you came back. We don't have you sequestered in a hotel or anything this year where you have to come back. So really appreciate everybody joining us this morning. A few housekeeping items. Number one is the lounges. I was mentioning that just a few minutes ago, but there's definitely the lounges in the session room, which are just open for people to come and hang out and say hi. I cannot stress enough how important our community is to obviously the conference, but ExpressionEngine as a whole, and really my day-to-day life, in Slack and all that. I love the guys that I meet here, and I love hanging out with everybody and miss everybody. So definitely utilize those lounges to say hi to each other and catch up. And then follow up with that on the ECMS Slack if you're not a part of that throughout the year. Hopefully we're going to have more conferences and workshops now that we kind of get this virtual thing under our belt here. So another thing along with that is because we want to do more, we need your feedback. So if you go to the reception area, there's some links for both speaker feedback that you can do for each session that you attend, and then also for the conference as a whole. So definitely leave your feedback. Let us know what you like, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see next time, especially from a virtual perspective, so that we can make this better. I'd have to mention donations for you guys that are not normally part of the community. The conference is actually ran by a group of community volunteers. Yes, technically I'm now part of the ExpressionEngine team, but I've been working on the conference for a few years already, just as a volunteer. And even now, I kind of work on it in extra hours here. ExpressionEngine is a great support, but the conference is ran by our own organization that is not for profit. And everything we're able to do is just through sponsors and through donations. So if you guys can share $5, $100, anything, if you go to eeconf.com/donate, please share those donations with us. It'll just help make next year when we go back to in-person, which has a lot more expenses than this, it'll help us be able to do that really well. And again, other conferences and stuff in the meantime. Caroline, yes, the speaker feedback link, it's in the reception area if you click on reception. And then also we're going to email all the attendees post-conference with his follow-up email as well. So I don't want to take any more time as we need to introduce Kandarp here and get started. So Kandarp Bhatt, who is founder and CEO of Zealous Web. He's an international speaker, data scientist, which I love some data, technology visionary, web aficionado, e-commerce enthusiastic, and mobility geek. He's actually been working with ExpressionEngine for 17 years now. They started up over in India, where he's at right now. It's about 8 o'clock in the evening now for you, I think, or 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock over there.
Yeah.
So appreciate him staying up late. And cool thing about Kandarp, kind of like myself, is started out in the industry as a developer and then moved over to project management. So that really gives him some insight. It's easy for developers to say project managers don't know what they're talking about or don't understand, but he does understand. And so looking forward today as we talk about project management and tips for delivering a successful project. And with that, Kandarp, I'll hand it over to you. Quick note, sorry, Q&A. We're going to do Q&A at the end. So ask your questions in the chat. I'll kind of collect all that, moderate all that. And then at the end, we'll do some Q&A about anything that we talk about. So with that, I hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Andy, for a great introduction. And just one more reminder is that, although I see that a lot of people are coming to this session from yesterday's session as well, so they know about it, but somebody who is new to the session, you can just double click on maybe the slide or something in order to maximize that. Having said that, I think before I start my presentation, I would like to thank you, ExpressionEngine community and the organizer, to again invite me on this conference 2020, which is virtual this year. And I think, like he said, that I have started my programming career back in 2001. Then I decided to, move on with some people management and being a leader rather than doing things myself. Usually topics that I present in these conferences are more towards the business track rather than the technical track. But I enjoyed a lot of tracks yesterday, and I was up till around 4 a.m. in the morning until the business roundtable session ended. So all excited about it, and let's move forward. So welcome to the Expression Engine Conference 2020, and today my topic for the presentation is practical indispensable project management tips and delivering a successful Expression Engine project. When I say that practical tips, which means that it doesn't cover a lot of things related to the maybe the standard project management tools that we are all aware of. We have been, researching on that, and everybody has their own good fit about it. So there is no good and bad thing that we can probably distinguish. So I will be covering more to things related to, although those are things that is part of a presentation are going to be pretty much common things that we know about the project management, but I think I would try to relate them with the real-time situation, case studies based on the projects that we have done so far. So that's having said that, I think I would start my presentation with something that has some sort of short story that how I ended up becoming a business owner right now. But back in 2001, I completed my computer degree, and then I started programming myself, and I was coding in PHP using the Smarty templates, which is a very old story. And I think I did it for almost 1.5 to 2 years, and I worked on a lot of custom projects. So, and there was open source, wasn't very new things at that time. So from beginning, I am a person who believes in more of a customization, having ability to do a lot of things yourself rather than find yourself in a no man's land where you don't have any options and you have to stick to certain things because of the budget of the project or maybe the timeline that would require to modify those things. But after that, I think I find myself better at managing the team and the people, and then I started my profile as a hybrid profile where I was doing a bit of coding every day and also try to manage the clients and the teams and sometimes the family members as well, because there are too many things that I need to look at. And then I eventually found myself that I'm better at project management and I quit the coding. So I did the coding for 4-5 years initially when I started my career, but like Andy has said, I know the pain areas of the coders and I try to understand a lot of time the team as well as the client, and I'm trying to balance those things whenever the opportunity comes. So having said that, I think there are some of the statistics that I would like to present to these people who are available today, is that around 58% of the people doesn't understand, like only 58%, like 60% of the people that understands the value of a project management. I was speaking to someone in the morning and from the Expression Engine community only, and he was saying that before he joined an organization, there was no project management done. So every time, you find somebody who says that, they have a bunch of good programmers, they are really skilled, well talented, but they don't have any project management tools or maybe, a proper processes that is implemented. And they might think that, something can be done maybe in few hours time, but then probably it takes more than expected in order to deliver the entire piece of code that you might have developed, because they might have not considered all the other aspects that you should be considering for that particular project. So still there are organizations in this world that are not just necessary from the IT, but all over the world with the different industry and all, they still don't understand how important it is project management. So there is a scope for everybody to start doing this. Most of the time, we have heard that 60 to say like 40 to 30 to 40% IT projects usually gets to a failure stage, and those are the larger projects, not the one that we probably are dealing with. But sometimes if you go back and see what are your biggest failures in the project, maybe that failure could not be a financially burden to the company or over budgeting or something, but maybe something you wanted to achieve and you could not achieve it. That's also a failure. And that is always with the when the time and the scope of the work increases, when you have a multiple of members involved in the project, you are increasing your risk, and you might have not done the due diligence for the risk management as well, and that's where you really try to see that the project gets. Apart from this, I think there are a few things that, as a tool, I'm not going to go into detail, but there are things, the time tracking, because everything is built on hourly basis in our industry, as well as if you wanted to share larger files, you use the cloud storage that you have, or you try to do some email integration with some of the tools so that you can probably respond back via email and all. And Gantt chart, and probably last but not least, budget management. These are the tools that people do use in their project management. And apart from that, I think project performance has been always rising around 10% globally. So let's say if we take the data from last 3 years, and if we see that most of the project goals that earlier it was 60%, and now recently in last 3 years it is like around 70%, which is 10% high. It means that if you do a project management, probably there is a better way of executing that project as well. Having said that, these are some of the statistics which I wanted to present to the community, and then now I have a few assumptions that probably I have taken for considering the aspect that I wanted to cover in this session. And those are, first one is that I expect that probably whomsoever has joined today's session is having around 1 or 2 years of experience in the project management. Now, not necessarily like that you have a designation in your company, or maybe that as a project manager or account manager, but it is something like you probably you are doing a job of a project manager. A lot of us, most of the time, at the end of the day, we see that this is not my job, this is the job of a project manager, and I'm doing that. So even though you have been doing this for 2 or 3 years now, probably this presentation will be useful to you as well. Another thing is that I assume that you more or less get the resources that you would like to. I know that this is the biggest challenge, because sometimes you are short of resources, or maybe sometimes you have a resource, but they are not the right fit for the task that you wanted to execute. But I think that's not the case always with the project management. If you are doing a project management for every single client or every single project that you are executing in the company, probably there are better chances that you get the resources that you need. And in terms of, if you are short of resources, there are to, get to that challenge as well. But that's not probably part of this presentation, because we understand there are contractors out there. There are a few, outsourcing options that you are available as well. So I think you can manage those resources if you need the right compatibility for that as well. Apart from this, I think all relevant stakeholders, which means that the client, as well as your boss, you yourself, and the team members. I consider team members as a stakeholder sometimes as well, because they are the one who usually decide the success of the project as well, based on their interest in the project. So let's say you assign a project to somebody, and they are not interested at all in that technology to work upon, and you find yourself in a trouble in the future as well. So I also assume that whomsoever you have selected as a project members are interested in the project and they understand what is the goal for the project as well. And obviously the basic skills that are required for that particular task to be executed. If you have a low skilled people doesn't know how to do the things, probably irrespective of whatever project management techniques that you are going to put in, I think you are not going to get success on that. And the last but not the least, that you want to be an empath and not the empathetic. Now, there is a very thin difference between this empath and empathetic means you will want to feel the happiness and sadness of people. It's not about, every time you accept the request from the client, or maybe your boss, or maybe your team members, but you have an ability that you probably can do, and what is your opportunity, what is your cost in making certain decisions that you make for the project management. And I think it does not necessarily you should have that skills right now, but maybe you have a desire to become an empath rather than an empathetic person, project manager as well, because sometimes becoming an empathetic project manager is one of the reasons for a project failure, which usually people doesn't identify who make the decisions for that, but the other clients, or maybe your boss, or maybe somebody whom you are reporting, they will be able to realize that it's good to be a kind. I'm not saying that you need to be rude or sure, but you have to evaluate what is the cost versus opportunity cost for you guys while you making those decisions. So having said, these are the assumptions. And before I start, and because I am a big fan of Simon Sinek, and I think Golden Circle, most of us knows about this. And it says that why, how, and what. These are the three key questions that usually makes the difference in any success, like whether it's project or anything that you do in your life. And having said that, if I relate this with our project, right, then I think in our case, the why is the client or investor. And a lot of time we call our client as an investors because one of the agencies that we work with, our strategic partner, they have, few years back has told us that they are the investors because they are investing the money into the project, and they are not just the client, and they are accountable for why at all they want these things to be done. So if they are not sure why they are doing this, then probably there is a problem. Obviously, the consultants get into the picture for this kind of a scope where they don't know what to do, but not necessarily that every time you are going to hire a consultant for that, or they hire a consulting services from yourself. So in that case, the client or investors should be very much clear that why they are opting for this particular project that they want us to execute. So that's a why in our case. When it comes to the project manager, they are solely responsible how they want these things to be done, because they have been doing this, they have passed through these experiences, they have seen the real-time case studies which has given a success to them, and I think they are the right person to decide how to implement the entire project. And when it comes to what needs to be implemented and what needs to be accomplished as per the milestones and the to-dos decided, I think it's the project team, whether it's a senior developer, designer, or maybe your QA person or anybody, but they are the one who actually decide that what needs to be accomplished. So probably if you follow these three philosophy in your project, there are better chances that you get a success into that. Having said that, I think we will quickly move towards the actual tips that I wanted to give, and there are some around 8 different tips that I am going to share with you, which is based on my experience in last 20 years working with the IT industry and working on various projects in these 20 years. Now, the first one is that project is all about the people. Most of the time, we understand that, and that people consist of your own team that is going to execute this project, or maybe a client who is, or an investor who is probably going to be suffer if the project is going to get failure, or maybe yourself as well, because sometimes like the last two, clients, customer, and the yourself, is something which we usually forget as in project managers. Because client customers, if we keep them in mind, which means that it's talk about the client's success story. And if we also keep them in focus, that whether to deliver this feature or not, whether to include this in the scope or not, whether it will be beneficial to the client and not, or not. If you have a client's customer in focus, probably it becomes easier for project manager to do it. And last but not least, like I said, yourself, we usually find that we don't care about ourselves as in project managers, and we end up finding ourselves frustrated, which affects our personal as well as professional life. And sometimes we make a wrong decision. So it's about everybody, team, client, their customer, and the yourself as well. The second tip, which talks about the plan the work and work the plan. A lot of time we have found that we understand that everything needs to be planned. We got a deposit from the client, and now they need, they wanted to proceed with the project and they wanted to see something maybe in next couple of days and everything. But we all understand, after working with these really good agencies that we are in right now, and we understand the importance of the plan. But what we miss most of the time is that depending on the things changes during this project, we don't review the plan that we might have done. And probably if we are doing it ourselves, so that is limited to the one person and not the entire team or maybe the client and all. So that's why I think there are various factors that you need to consider when you actually make a plan for your project. So project goals, we all understand, client has sent a requirement, we send the proposal, everything is well defined. I think we know what are the goals for the project. But after the project goals, I think there are some inputs and there are some outputs. Influence your plan, project plan. And what are those input and outputs that probably you should be keeping in mind? So let's start with the input, and let's start with the research work. Although the proposal will be sent, the scope of the work has been finalized, but yet you have kept few things for the future because you are not sure that when you are estimating the project and working with the pre-sales team, you might have kept few things that if this project gets confirmed, we will look into it. Now, those things usually becomes a gray area at the mid of the project because you might have not done the proper research before even starting the project. So in order to give the estimate, I think you might have done the research, you might have your own experience that you might have used. But again, I think doing a proper research on certain things which you don't know, and every time we find, if you are very enthusiastic people team, if you have an enthusiastic team, you are doing everything new every month, every quarter, I think you will find yourself in a situation where you in 30% or 40% of the project that you are doing is something that you are doing for the first time. And it's not that you don't know about it, but the things change so quickly in our industry that every 6 or 12 months you have to deal with these all latest things that comes in the market, and you have to evaluate that as well. And for that, the research is required. The next part is the documentation. Now, there are various types of documentation that we have seen in past for the ExpressionEngine, especially projects that we manage. Sometimes people ask us to, upgrade the ExpressionEngine website from, let's say, 1.0 or 2.0 to, let's say, 5, or maybe 3 to 5, or maybe now I think they will start asking about, moving to the 6 as well. Now, what happens is that the document that they share with us are pretty old. There are a few things which is deprecated from there. There are a few things which was agreed by the original development team, and it does not make any sense anymore. So these are the documents that you usually get from the client, that these are the technical documents, these are the functionality document that previous development team has passed to us. I think this could probably be in one of the influential factor for the project plan that you create, whether you wanted to get rid of some of the add-ons and whether you wanted to add some new add-ons, you want to do custom code for that, you wanted to get rid of the entire functionality because client has not seen any value to their customers or themselves. All of these things, probably these documents can help you in the project plan that you are going to design. The third thing, and I don't know how many of you does this, but I think interview the stakeholders, which means in my presentation earlier, I said that stakeholder doesn't mean limited to the clients only, but yes, you should interview them, because a lot of times the documents are being shared. We say that, this has been on the Trello or maybe Slack. I shared this Google document with you. You should have gone through this, and because we have specified each and everything, it's fine. You do it to cover yourself legally, but sometimes it becomes more easy if you try to interview your clients and you ask certain questions. For that answers you have written in the document that you already shared with them, which means that you can go back and you can circle back with the client and say that, okay, this is what we have agreed upon, and that's the start of the project. Because usually we find that this happens when 70 or 80% of project completion. Then when the actual process starts about evaluating the things, I think that's where we find the problem. If you wanted to avoid this, I think if we interview the stakeholders who might not be willing to read those lengthy documents that you might have shared with them, I think that could probably help as well. Sometimes we also interview our project team as well. Let's say we pass certain documents to them, and if we know that they are fresher, they don't understand the importance of it, and then probably we may ask a couple of questions to them, which usually, and based on their answer, we can probably understand whether they have gone through it or not. So sometimes you as a project manager have to verify and review these kind of things as well. And that's why I say that every member or every person in the project is accountable for this. Now, having said that, let's talk about the output. And let's say the actual work is your output. So where your project plan consists about what we need to do is the scope of the work that usually you have. You also mentioned about the sprints and the demo. So let's say your project plan should be clear that when the client should be, updated with the releases that you are going to have. So that's where you decide the typically you wanted to have a 2 or 3 weeks sprint on that, and what are our demo plans, because not necessarily that every sprint will have a URL that client can see, but maybe sometimes you wanted to demo something by populating the actual content on the website so it looks like a real website to the client, and that's where they start giving us the feedback, which is a part of an agile methodology. And I think I don't want to deep dive into that. We are going to cover something about the agile methodology in my later presentation, but right now I think the output is something where you have to define and for the clients as well, and obviously the deliverables, because if they know that what they are going to receive at a particular time or a date, I think client will be able to adjust their own schedules accordingly, and also the resource planning becomes easier because we know that these are the things that needs to be delivered as well. And then we should not be forgetting about signing off the things. Now, typically what I have found in the project management is that we as an design agencies sometimes, or maybe as a development agency, we understand that only thing that client need to give a feedback on is the design of the site, because that's what they understand. And usually we sign off the designs, and once that is signed off, there are no stages that we include which tells them that there is no change in this, right? So in favor of developers and the team, I think we should also start practicing signing off the functionality as well. So it is like, we can always say that don't focus on the design right now, because we understand that you like the design, and we might create a new interface for this bit of functionality that we are going to achieve. But I think you need to actually see now that whether these features and functions are working or not, and you need to sign off that as well, because if you don't sign off that, probably they might have come across maybe 5 or 10 different other websites during the time you are developing a piece of code for them, and they will come back to you and ask for some other features which might be time taking. Sometimes it takes less time, then you might not be worried, or you would like to include that in the original scope. But I think signing off the features and the functionalities is also equally important, along with the design files. So we specifically we have few sprints and few demos where we say that we are not going to look at design anymore, even though things are breaking. All we are focusing on is the data that you are looking at right now on the front end, or maybe something on an admin control panel. So signing off and how to set up an admin control. So let's say in case of ExpressionEngine, sometimes I heard somebody yesterday in one of the presentation that they have a very hard time with the client in terms of how to manage the control panel, because there are no easy way to implement the structures, or maybe the sitemaps and trees and all. I think if you probably sign off sometimes an admin interface as well, that is also beneficial in terms of this is how you are going to manage from the admin, because client and their secretaries or their admin staff, who is a less technical people, if they probably say, okay, this is something which we can handle, probably that makes sure that there will be no changes in how we are set up things in the ExpressionEngine admin side as well, whether it's a categories or a field types or channels, whatever you care, talk about. But I think signing off the features is equally important, along with the design files that we usually sign off. And then again, the timeline and the fees. That's what you wanted to put in the output, that this is the timeline, and I think these are the fees that we are going to charge the client on top of any additional feature that are requested. So that's pretty much your working plan in terms of input and output. So these are the factors that you should consider when you create your project plan. Moving to the next, there are 4 different questions. Like say we have all these inputs, and we know that what is the thing that we need to put as an output. Now we are actually into the creating a project plan, and there are 4 questions that we need to ask ourselves. And the first one is that what we are going to achieve in this particular project, and that is the scope of the work, which is very simply thing. And I can try and say what are the different elements of this and what are the things that you should do. So first thing first is that when you create a project plan, you need to stop. It's not like somebody has said to you that, okay, this is the project, we got the payment, the invoice is paid, the designs files are received, go ahead and start the building the website. That's not how we decide the plan. We stop for a second, and then after stopping, we clarify certain things. So let's say there will be a document, there will be a design files that are signed off, and then the other things. So there are a few things which you again need to clarify with the client, because now you are deep diving into it. It's not just the something that you are doing very quick because in order to save time, you are not sure whether this will go ahead or not. But now, since the designs are signed off, the project is in progress, client has paid the money, everybody is serious about it, let's clarify certain things as well. And then you see the different options. So let's say we usually, as an that clients should have told this us before, but they usually tell us if we give them various options available. So let's say if there is a piece of functionality needs to be achieved, and there are 3 different add-on does the same thing, we might have to present them these 3 different options, and then probably have to select the one which is best for them. So for an example, when you are scoping the work, right, that this needs to be done, this add-on needs to be added, this is the custom portion that we need to build, I think whatever possible options as in professionals, it's our responsibility to give them as an option, and then client pick one that, okay, this is the one that I want, because, and not necessarily you share the technical detail in terms of options that you present to them. It could be a non-technical things, but should able to give you an idea that which direction that client is going on. Then I think you can again proceed with that options that are selected by the client. And after you proceed, you again evaluate, which is, I'm going to cover these in the later slide as well. But sometimes we forget to evaluate the plan that we already mentioned. And that's why my title was for this slide was that work the plan and plan the work, which means that once everything is decided, we usually tend to go with the flow, and we forget to evaluate whether whatever we have decided is perfect or not. And that's how we scope the documentation, and that's a part of the first question that is on the what. Apart from this, you also need to decide that what are the different phases for this particular project. So sometimes if, let's say, client might have signed off the design files, but there are a few functionality and features that you see in the document, which is a client's wish, but it's actually not going to be included in the phase 1, right? And you need to probably define that in the project plan itself, because you are going to share this project plan with your fellow team members who might not necessarily have an idea about the entire project. And I think if you define clearly in your project plan that this is the phase 1, this is phase 2, and this is phase 3, probably they take all the provisions and things that they need to take care of, and still you probably don't spend time into something which was not a part of the phase 1 and 2. So that's the advantage of creating different phase and mentioning that in your project plan. Then again, you decide whether you are going to have a sprint or whether you are going to have a stand-up meeting. Now, there is a thin difference between having a sprints and the stand-up meeting, because I have seen organizations and agencies working 2 different methods. That when they have a 2-week sprints, they're not necessarily meeting every day, right? And what they do is that they decide everything about that 2-week sprint, and everybody understand about it because they have an work breakdown structure and everything defined in place, and then they probably meet maybe 1 or 2 days before the sprint and make sure that everything is aligned. So there is one way that people, because they think that everyday meeting is not possible because people work on a different time zone and all, and they wanted to make it convenient for the team, so they go for a stream. And the other team and other agencies I've seen successful is that irrespective of the time zone, wherever they are, there is a fixed time that they will have a stand-up meeting with them, and they discuss about it. And that's where they don't plan a lot of things, they plan for the day, and that's how it is. So you decide how you are going to execute this project, because sometimes for a longer project, it is difficult to have a stand-up meeting for, let's say, 3 months or 4 months. If it's a project of a week, you can have a stand-up meeting. You don't need a sprints for that. So decide what is the time duration, and depending on that, you can say that we are going to have a stand-up meeting on this project, or maybe we are going to have a sprints on this project. Moving to next, I think we need to clarify our needs and dependency. Now, everybody, we understand that there are all third-party things, whether it's a shipping gateway, payment gateways, or maybe any APIs like social media APIs that you wanted to integrate and all. These are considered to be a needs and dependency, where things are in your not control. You need to request somebody, and it takes time because they do it at their free time. Usually, I have seen that most of the project delays happens because these things doesn't come on time. And that's why in your project plan itself, whenever you start the project, you should start asking client, let's say, how about we start setting up the payment gateway? We understand that they are not going to approve the payment gateway until you show them a working demo of the website so that they understand what you are trying to sell to the people, and what you have a privacy policy or written policy written on the site. So I understand about it, but at least the those documents in order to apply for the payment gateway, or maybe whatever time that payment gateway people would like to take in order to review their. I think if we start talking about this from the day one, when actually you need these after 4 weeks or 8 weeks, you don't have to be heavily dependent on that. And I think the project plan desperately usually means, I've seen a lot of project plans where this is not included, and they know about it. They know that they are going to integrate and work with these third-party APIs, but probably they won't include that in their project plan because they think that it's not an immediate requirement, and they may keep it for the later time or date. Okay, so that finishes what needs to be included. Now, the project plan should also consist that when things needs to be communicated, and there is a concept called communication calendar. So that milestone and timeline, we all understand that as in project managers. But communication calendar is something which you as a project manager design for a particular project, where you include a specific date and time. You decide that you are going to communicate by the time you are going to communicate this to the client, and by the time you are going to communicate to your boss or the other stakeholders or other senior people in whom you are reporting to. By this time, you are going to communicate this to your development team or a designer or maybe your QA people. So even if you design this communication calendar, it also helps a lot, because usually you don't know what you are going to get tomorrow. You are going to get a big opportunity, everybody is going to work on it, and you may have to, as a project manager, you may have to divide your time in the other projects as well. But if you have this communication calendar in place, which is about you yourself as a project manager, then you know that I need to be communicated, because as a project manager, we all understand that communication is the key. Most of the project fails is because of the communication. And if you don't have this communication calendar in place, probably you tend to forget certain things. Even though you are maintaining your to-dos and checklist and everything, and you have a sticky notes, I understand that. But communication calendar, if you have something which is in your hand, you can check it in the mobile, you can do the diligence, and probably that helps a lot. So milestone and timeline, I'm not going to go into detail about it because we understand the importance of that. But communication calendar is something where should be a part of our project plan as well. Now moving to the next one, who all need to be informed? That should be a part of your project plan as well. So let's say sometimes you ask certain things to a business owner and actually they don't know about it. And later in the project that you come to know that you get a feedback from their IT manager or maybe somebody who has an understanding about the things, they start giving you the feedback on certain things. And then you end up saying that this was approved and we talked about it before. So your project plan, which you share with the client, should also include that whom should be consulted for what. In terms of budget, who should be our point of contact. In terms of features and functionality, who is our point of contact. So all who needs to be consulted, I think that's what probably a part of the project plan as well. And I think inform, when I say that inform, I think it is about your team members, because a lot of time we give a priority to our person that we are reporting to or maybe the client, but sometimes we tend to forget to inform to our own team member as a project manager. And if we kill ourselves later on saying that if I would have informed this before, because we internally know that it's me who has done this. And if I would have informed this before to the team, probably we would have a solution before and we might not be in a place which we are right now. That's why your project plan should also include that who needs to be informed and when they need to be informed as well. And once you inform them, I think you have a right to make them accountable for various things as well. So it is said that once you tell people, right, you are free. If you keep the things with you, probably you are the one who is going to be accountable for it. But when you share the information, the ball is somebody else's court, and then probably you make them accountable for that, and you also inform them that they are the accountable for those things, right? So I think we talked about the communication plan. Now there are preferences, irrespective of how good the Slack tool is, or maybe the project management tool like Basecamp is and all, but client likes to do the conversation on email because he checks his email maybe every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or maybe he is better at WhatsApp because that's where he spends most of his time. And I think you need to decide that which is the method that you are going to use, and what is the client wish, or maybe the team member's wish, or maybe your reporting person's wish as a project manager. You need to decide and see and consider these as well, because sometimes if you reach out to somebody on a WhatsApp, you get a faster response rather than you just keep on emailing or assigning certain things on your Basecamp and let them, at the start of the project, they say that, yes, we know this and we can handle this, but responded to this because they don't want you to know that they don't know about it. And then later on, they find themselves on some. I think since communication is the key, I think method and wish needs to be decided as well. Now, apart from this, the third tip that I wanted to share is that you need to share the major credit with the people. Now, this is where we make a lot of mistakes. So usually we wanted to gain more in terms of, let's say it's a partnership or in a project or anything, you say that 50% mine, 50% your. But if you just divide that with one person and say that 51% is you and 49% is me, probably you get a better input from the other party. So every time you do share major credit with the and keeping it with yourself, that 1% doesn't make a difference to you, but that makes a difference in the project plan as well. Apart from this, we talked about, I can do everything and kind of thing. We need to move to the monotasking from the multitasking thing. And I shared an example. You see the burning roti, which is more often like an Indian bread that we usually eat on a daily food, and maybe the burned barbecue as well. And the objective was to have a cooking. But while cooking, we find sometimes as a project manager on the phone, replying somebody on the Slack, whether it's a community or a project. Sometimes we reply to email or maybe we WhatsApp to the client as well. And I think we probably do not achieve the things. And we can do it. We can cook together. We can cook as well as we can do all of these things simultaneously. But the end result is usually not the same. And if you wanted to get a consistent result, I think it's monotasking over the multitasking that you should be focusing upon. So you should try undoing that. Learn to say no. I think it's not about I will not do it, but it's a noble objection that I'm talking about. And there is a very good book written, which I read before 4 years. And I would recommend all of you to maybe go through it. And I know that you might have read about that as well. And it's about a disciplined pursuit of less. That's the book by the Greg McKeown. And I think you can probably learn a lot of things from that book, that how you can say no to everything that comes to you. And as a project manager, things will come to you because you are the main point of contact for everybody. And you have to say no sometime for the temporary period or maybe for permanent side as well. So we need to learn these noble objections as well. Apart from this, I think WBS for the project, and there is a concept called MEES as well. And I will quickly go through what these work breakdown structure look like. Whether your project is a small or whether your project is a large, I think both needs the work breakdown structure, because that breaks the activity and people are clear about it, that what needs to be achieved in the projects. So let's say you take a project, you take a scope of the work, and then you break down in the tiny things and you design certain things for the designer, you put certain things for the developer, you put certain things for the tester, QA and testing team, and there will be something that is for the project manager himself. So you need to have a work breakdown structure implemented and in the bits and pieces. Whether if the project size is larger, I think you use the tool like Microsoft Project, which is it made for. If the project is typically, we use Microsoft Word or Google Doc for breaking this down, who is going to be responsible for what and who is going to achieve those things. So I think having a work breakdown structure for each and every project is very essential. For a project lifecycle, which is around 2 days, 5 days, 3 days, 7 days, I think there is no need for that because it's itself in 1 or 2 tasks. But if the project life cycle is, let's say, more than 4 weeks, I seriously recommend to have a work breakdown structure for the projects as well. So there is a concept called MEES, which says mutually exclusive and completely exhaustive, which means that when you design this work breakdown structure, it has to be mutually exclusive, which means that it should clearly state that team member A is going to work on this and team member B is going to work on this. A lot of time we find ourselves in a project where B has to do the things that A is supposed to get finished because the B has finished that earlier. So if we have a mutually exclusive work breakdown structure, it would work. And as well as it should be completely exhaustive, which means that it should cover each and every aspect of the project. And you need to go into the minor details of it. It's not the ballpark estimate that you are working upon. It's the actual project that you are executing. And in that, the more exhaustive it is, you will find that the project will be finished and you even don't know about it. Why? Because you have made it so that any questions during the project, you have that in your project plan itself. Right? Now, there is a, as far as the work breakdown structure is concerned, one of the videos that I come across, and they says that there are different way the people from UK that divide this work breakdown structure, and there is another way how the people from North America and US, they divide. For UK agencies that we work with, we found that usually they have a work breakdown structure which is based on activity and the task. So they will be focusing on that. Wherein when it comes to the US, it's more about deliverables and the product that they are building for. So neither one is right or wrong. It's having like depending on your working style, the culture, the kind of client you have, both is good. But at least your work breakdown structure should focus either of these things. Either it should be based on the activities or tasks, or it should be based on the deliverables that you might have decided in the project proposal. Then it comes to the 7th tip, and it is about whether to go for a Scrum or a Kanban or hybrid is better. So there is a small difference between the Scrum and Kanban agile methodology that we follow for the project. Is Scrum where you have a 2-week sprint and you have a Scrum-master in that, and in the agile methodology and for the Kanban projects you have an agile coach. That's why they are running the entire project in that. In Scrum meetings, you have 2-week sprint, wherein in Kanban, you have a daily sprint because you decide about things, what you are going to achieve today, and then you are going to test it, and then you are going to build it. The only difference between the Kanban and the Scrum, which I found has a major impact, and you need to decide whether your project or product, which approach that you need, is that if you are heavily dependent on the users who's going to use this product or maybe website, and if you are probably focusing on their feedback as well, then Scrum is much better because they have that feedback loop in that. Wherein Kanban approach, it's more about the people who is behind that, who are the investors or maybe the expert like us from the industry. They are the one who decides that this is the right way of doing it. So you, depending on your project approach, you can decide whether to go with a Scrum or whether to go with the Kanban approach as well. For us, what has helped a lot is that we take a Scrum approach, and in order to make sure that things go and meet as per the timeline, we also have a Kanban approach where we have a daily stand-up meeting, making sure that things are in place and we don't get any surprises on later date as well. So we do a little bit of hybrid of both. Now, the 8th tip is about how we can preventing the scope Crips, and one is that we define the scope very clearly. That's how we can probably do it, but we know that scope is going to be not considered as a serious document, and that's why probably you will start logging the changes, and probably you will say which was originally agreed and which was the additional one. Even if you are doing it for free, you mention to the client that we are doing this for free, so they understand what we have not agreed upon and we are doing it as a favor, or maybe for a client relationship or something like that. Again, depending on this, we need to reschedule the baseline schedule that we might have created, because a lot of time we log the changes and we keep on doing it, but we forget to update our timelines for that. We forget to update our clients on the timeline as well, and that needs to be rescheduled as well. Then at some point you need to start requesting the cost. One of the factors that we found that when you start asking money, probably they limit their request in order to make sure that they wanted to achieve the phase one faster. And I'm not talking about the wrong, money about it. It means I'm talking about only thing that is out of scope. You need to, as a project manager, you need to watch the sign. Usually when you don't hear back from the client, or when they say okay to everything that you send to them, probably those are the early signs of project to get failure, because they are not at all paying an attention to it. Either they are not responding to it, or there is everything is okay, and there is nothing like a perfect in this world, and there has to be some sort of feedback. So if you are receiving okay for everything, or maybe you are not hearing back from the client, that's a problem. You have to avoid the traps. And this morning when we started, I was talking about with Andy on this, and it was like, they say that, hey, this doesn't take too long. It's like 4 hours, 5 hours job, or maybe 1 or 2 days job. Or they will say that probably you can do it for maybe this time only, and kind of thing. These are the traps which we usually, as a project manager, find ourselves that is a reasons for having project go over budget or miss the timelines as well. So having said that, we are limited by the time as well. I will quickly recap all these practical tips that we discussed. And the project is all about people. Then plan the work the plan, share major credit with the other because it makes your life easy. Monotasking from the multitasking, because that keeps you focused and achieve more. Learn to say no. The noble objective, it's not about denying about the thing, but it's more about, you see the opportunity cost when you are saying yes to the other things. WBS for the small project, and we discussed a little bit about the different approach from the different regions. Scrum or Kanban, you decide which is better for you, and then preventing the scope as well. Having said that, I think I would like to finish this presentation with one quote: is there is a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. So a lot of time as a project manager, because of we want to accomplish things very fast, we tend to forget to create this project plan itself, which we discussed today. And if we don't prepare it, even if it's a half one, let's prepare it, because if you wanted to make it perfect, I think we will find a problem in that as well. And that's it. I think a little bit more about me. Greg has already told to you, but I'm a founder and CEO for ZealousWave, and I got a chance to speak last year as well in Minnesota as well. And I have spoke to other events because we are a full service wave agency. We do a little bit work on different CMS as well, apart from ExpressionEngine. So a WordCamp Ahmedabad, as well as I got a chance to speak in LA on the WordCamp event as well. And I have total 19 years of experience in this industry. I am a science graduate in the education. I'm having a specialization in computers as a master degree in business admin as well. I'm a youngest child of my parents. Unfortunately, we lost our mother a couple of months back. I'm a husband of a beautiful wife, as is a universal truth. Last year also I said that wives are always beautiful, and I'm a father of 2 kids. I'm a wicketkeeper, batsman, and a part-time bowler, and in a cricket, which is pretty much similar to the baseball game, and that's why you see me in the Mets t-shirt, because one of the partner wanted to gift me this. So having said that, I think, I don't know, Andy, we have a time left for the questions, but I'm open for the questions now.
Yeah, thanks, Kandar. So, yeah, great chat there. As a project manager myself, I love that chat, and I love the idea of making a plan, and that quote that you ended with a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. One thing that I say, as you were talking about the people in project management, is I always say that my job as a project manager is to create a good experience for everybody on both sides of the table, for my team to actually enjoy the work, and for my client's team or whoever I'm doing that for, the stakeholders on the other side, to have a good experience as well. And just like operations and business, if you have clarity, if you have a plan, if everybody knows what they're doing, everybody enjoys that experience so much more. So that's a really great word. We really don't have time, but I'll take, if anybody's got one question they want to ask, go ahead and throw that out there. Otherwise, we have the next session starting here in about 3 minutes. So I don't want to take people away from that. But if anybody has one question, we'll hang around for about 1 minute here, which you guys should have been thinking about your questions already. So everyone says great session. All right. So again, Kendra.
So and just I wanted to say that I will be around in the launches as well. So probably we can talk about that as well in the launches. So I can probably take one-on-one questions as well if there any.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, I think it was such a great to have a lovely audience for today. I think next year already, Andy has said, I'm already excited about it. I'm not talking about the speakership, but I will definitely be part of that event as well because I wanted to catch up with all of you again. And great to see you all who we met in person last year and would love to, talk to you in the launches.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. See everybody later.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.